Okay, wait, let's try again. Oh, I think it worked. Let's see if I'm on. I see now the comment section. Oh, yay! Oh. I don't see the live. Oh, there we go. We did it. It's working. Okay. I'm going to edit the the title of the video. Welcome everyone. It's Monday. Welcome to, I'm going to just do a quick setup over here on TikTok. Okay. I'm on and it's working. Yes. The camera I have reversed, so it's so trippy to do this on the computer. All right, welcome everyone to Thrive Live. It's Monday morning here in Hawaii. I'm so excited to be here. Today's Thrive Live, I'm going to teach you guys how to reconnect when you get disconnected. But first, we're going to take an oil shot because, you know, of course, that is very important. And I love taking this in the morning. I'm actually using a little bit of tea today instead of like my typical just water. And I am doing lemon oil. So I've got 3 drops of lemon oil. I need a little bit of like uplifting action, rebalancing, and we're going to do lavender. So because we're talking about reconnecting in a conflict, lavender is actually really, really incredible for lowering cortisol levels. So if you feel very stressed, I just did 2 drops. It doesn't just like put you to sleep. Lavender is just so calming and relaxing. But when you take it during the day, it works differently and it doesn't put you to sleep. So I'm doing lemon and lavender, simple. I have a couple other oils here. I'm out of frankincense, but if you have frankincense, drop a few drops in there because that's going to be amazing. Let's just add DDR Prime because it's an awesome oil. This is for cellular regeneration. It has clove, lemongrass, wild orange, frankincense, litsea, summer savory thyme. Those are all really good. Antibacterial and helps cellular function. I like taking essential oil shots because they're amazing and it uplifts me and gets me ready for the day, even though I was up this morning very early practicing my yoga. So if you're taking an oil shot with me, cheers. And it's this color because I'm drinking tea. It's not warm though, it's on the cooler side. All right, so in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to reconnect if you feel disconnected from someone. I actually did a video. I made a post on a conflict that my kids had, and I just shared what happened in the conflict and then how I reconnected everybody in the conflict, but I didn't just go into details of how the reconnection session works. So I wanted to go over that today. I've talked about my form that I use for reconnection sessions before, and it's fantastic. It's a good guide because once you understand and learn how to communicate in that way, then it becomes very easy to eliminate or omit the form from your conversations. So let's get to it. Yay! And side note, if you're dealing with an emotional, so any situation that occurs in regards to relationship can throw us off balance emotionally. And when we get off balance emotionally, then our prefrontal cortex in our brain gets hijacked. And when the prefrontal cortex gets hijacked, then we can't think clearly, we cannot connect with people, we can't function, we cannot thrive in our environment. So this type of process actually allows the amygdala, the part of the brain that senses danger, to relax and calm down, which then releases the prefrontal cortex, because it grabs on and hijacks the prefrontal cortex when it is in the state of fear or it is triggered, like there's some sort of danger. So then it relaxes, it releases the prefrontal cortex, and we're actually able to thrive and function like at optimal capacity, which is what we want. So we want to learn how to reconnect in our relationships to create that thriving environment. And this is something that I teach my kids, and they're just getting so good at it now. And I noticed, like at the beginning when I first started teaching them years ago, it just took them longer to get to the point of actually knowing what to say and how to say it. And even so, still, they get into conflicts and they get thrown off balance. It's very, very normal for that to occur. But the time that they're disconnected is so much shorter. And this is what I see in a lot of issues with relationships and with parents and their kids or siblings, is that they struggle to talk and communicate about the issue that occurred, the pain that they felt, and how to repair that injury. And so the time in between, it's like very long. We go without speaking at all about what happened. We go months and days and weeks and years even sometimes without speaking about those things. And then it becomes very, very difficult to come back together. So a reconnection is so important when an injury in a relationship happens. And I use the word conflict or dilemma because I feel like that's so much better than fight, but it means the same thing. So if you're in a fight or you've gotten into a fight with someone or you've fought with someone in your life, of course, right? Family, friends, children, siblings, co-workers, colleagues, this is a really great way to repair and reconnect. And if it's been a long time, that's okay. People say time heals everything, and that is absolutely not true. Time heals absolutely nothing. Just settles the pain to the bottom. And then when you actually bring up the issue again, or you talk about the conflict that occurred or the pain point, we actually physically feel that pain all over again, like it just happened to us in the moment that we're talking about it. So let's go over how to do this reconnection. So the first thing that you need to know, that in every single conflict or fight that you have with anybody, whether it's your brother, your sister, your parent, or if it's your child or your spouse or your sibling, there are 2 roles that you take in the relationship, in the conflict, that you're either a pursuer or you're a withdrawer. When you get hurt, this is good to identify what role do you take. When you get hurt, are you like, I want to talk about it right now? This is like very important for me to discuss. Like, I have to deal with this right now. Or like me, I like to say I'm like a recovered withdrawer. Are you like, all right, I need to disconnect. I need to take space. Like, I'm just going to shut down. So that is typically the 2 rules that people take in a conflict. So you could be the withdrawer or the pursuer. And in relationships, we actually take different roles. Like with my parents, I was very much a withdrawer. With my kids, I'm very much a pursuer. Like if there's something wrong or I sense that there's something going on, then I want to know what's happening. But now that I think about it, actually, even just saying it out loud, when I get triggered or I get hurt, I'm still like what I like to call a withdrawer, recovered withdrawer. I tend to go inwards, and then I need a little bit of time to process that, and then I turn around and I can express it. So also in a conflict, it's important to identify there are what's called raw spots and emotions. So the most incredible thing about learning how to communicate about your emotions and how to create these repairs and conflicts is to be aware of what you do when you get hurt and when you get triggered. So the best way to find out is by using the step-by-step process. And this is the form. I love this form because it just lays out every single step you need to take to understand what's happening with you, and to also understand what's happening with the other person that's involved in the conflict. So, anytime my kids get disconnected, I can sense it, and you guys are probably very familiar with the people in your life, what happens to them when they get disconnected. Maybe their facial expression changes, their tone of voice changes, maybe they're distant, maybe you feel like a different tone in their texts, maybe you feel like withdrawn, maybe you feel also say they said certain words that were hurtful, or maybe they did some actions that made you feel like it, like maybe they're disconnected. So all of those are signs that there could be a disconnection. So when there's an issue that comes up with my kids, then immediately the very first thing I do is I tell them, okay, let's slow down. Let's slow down and pause. Let's take a deep breath. Slow down. Everybody slow down. This is very, very, very important. Okay, hold on. I'm going to save this video. Oh, what happened? Oh no. No. Aw, I think I might have just messed up on this. Darn. Why does it do that? Why does it do that? Okay. So, I was recording here on TikTok too because I've had so many requests to teach about how to do these reconnection sessions. So I was recording here on my phone and I just realized that none of it got saved. Oh man, that's okay. I'm going to also post this video on YouTube so it's available. Okay, so let's go back to the reconnection session. So when I notice that my kids get triggered or they get off balance, then the very first thing I do is I say, everybody slow down, take a deep breath, everybody slow down. This is very important because we want to slow everything down. Emotions are so powerful, so when we get triggered, we just the entire emotion takes over, and we have not yet learned the tools to self-soothe so that we can be emotionally regulated and balanced when we get into a conflict. So at the very beginning, when you're first starting to learn this, it's important to do this process just like this. It's important to say, all right, everybody slow down. Everyone take a breather. Take a few deep breaths. It's going to be okay. Let's slow down. So if you have, that is when I see the kids are getting into it. One person is saying something, the other person's responding, their voices are getting louder. There's different signs that you can tell when there's a disconnection. The tone of voice changes, right? I was saying the facial expression changes. There's words that are said that could be hurtful. So all of these things are signs that kids are getting disconnected. Same thing goes for you. These are signs that you could be getting disconnected too. So the very first thing I say is, okay, slow down, everyone slow down, let's pause, let's take a deep breath. The second thing I say is it's nobody's fault. Nobody's the bad guy. And I turn to one of the kids and I will say, it makes sense. It's very difficult for you. Your feelings are valid. I turn to the other kid. I say, it makes sense. It's very difficult for you. Your feelings are valid. Both of you guys are struggling. And let's take a deep breath and slow down, and then let's get into it. Let's get into communicating about what's happening. So this is a very important step because it's important to just slow the cycle down. Before, when I first started teaching this process to my kids, I would actually tell them okay, this is what's happening. We're getting caught into a cycle, a negative cycle. This is what we would say it out loud. So that way there wasn't shame around what they were doing or what they were saying or how they were feeling. This is so important. We don't want to experience shame, or we don't want to create an environment where a child or a person in your relationship feels shame. And I grew up with a lot of shame, so that was very difficult for me to work through. But this process really helped me feel like it was okay. What I was experiencing was normal, and it's okay to feel these feelings. So that's the first step I do. So if you're in a conflict with someone and you're in it, and it's not like you helping your kids, for example, I usually say, like, okay, let's slow down. It's nobody's fault. You're not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. Let's slow down. We have to do the pause. We have to do the slowing down so that it is easier to process what's going on. It can get very, very overwhelming, and our nervous system and our amygdala gets like fired off, and then our prefrontal cortex gets hijacked by the amygdala, and then we can't think clearly. We can't process what's happening, and we can't be responsive, emotionally responsive and engaged. Okay? So remember, I mentioned there are 2 roles that everyone takes in every single relationship, the withdrawer or the pursuer. So you have a withdrawer that shuts down, the pursuer wants to take action right now. Neither are good or bad, it's just the 2 roles you take in a conflict. And then those roles can change based on what relationship you're dealing with. So with your parents, it could be different. With your children, it could be different. With your spouse, it could be very different. Okay, so now what I do is, after you slow everybody down, then we're able to identify clearly what it is exactly that hurt the other person. So if you're helping someone reconnect, I'm focused on my children because I feel like I'm constantly reconnecting them in different situations. So I'm focusing on that. So if you're helping your kids reconnect, it would look like, all right, let's slow down, and then I take each person's perspective. Now, let's say one person's really hurt, okay? Then it's important to help balance that person out. So, like, let's say one of the kids is crying. Then I say, like, I want to tend to the child that is crying or the most expressive with their emotions at the moment. If there's one child that's like really angry, then we want to tend to that child that's really angry at that moment so that you can help de-escalate the emotions. So when one of my kids is crying, or I have a child that's really angry, I tell them, okay, oh, that was my daughter messaging me. It's gonna be okay. Like, I tried to comfort them, whether they want a hug. I understand it's very difficult for you. Your feelings are valid. We're going to go through this together. It's not your fault. I see that you're very upset. These are really good phrases to say. I understand it must be very difficult for you. You must be very hurt, and I see that. And I would also be so hurt in this situation. So you want to tend to the child that is hurting. So this is really different than typical parenting. Typical parenting will, like, turn the attention to, like, the child that is not crying, that maybe, like, didn't do the didn't do the hurting. That's what it seems like. And will blame and shame the child. So, like, for example, if one child is crying because the other and it said, oh my God, like, he hit me or he tackled me or whatever, typical parenting will turn to the child that did the action of, like, attacking or hitting and immediately shame and blame them. But it's really important to identify here is that you tend to the child that's hurting first. So, like, let's say you're dealing with a situation and it's not a child, it's your spouse, or it is your friends or your colleagues or your coworkers. It's important to help yourself regulate and de-escalate first before you have this reconnection session, because it can be very difficult to tend to somebody else's needs if you're not able to regulate yourself. So you're in the situation, the child is crying, you tell the child, okay, it's okay, you're not alone. This is very important. You're not alone. Your feelings are valid. It's going to be okay. I know how difficult it is for you. It's not your fault. It's not your brother's fault. It's not your sister's fault. It's no one's fault. And then I also turn to the child that maybe did the action, like kicking or hitting or whatever happened, or yelling or taking something away. And I say, I know that it's very difficult for you. I say the same thing. It's not your fault. And I tell them it's going to be okay. Okay. Then I want to de escalate so that both people stay in the situation. Hold on, you guys. I have to just. Oh my God. Okay. Yay. That worked. Excellent. Um, so I want to make sure that two people are staying in the situation. I don't want anyone to leave. Okay, now, this last conflict I had with my kids, Noah, who got really hurt, he was crying, he left and went into the car because we were out on a hike on like this beautiful mountain, this beautiful hill. And so he went into the car and he was crying. And I decided to stay with the other three kids, well, the other four kids at that time. Adelina wasn't really involved, but it was really Micah, Ellie, and Avi that were involved with Noah. And so I decided to stay with them to help calm them down. And I knew that Noah was in the car and he was crying. And no, we don't ever want to let children cry alone. Like, I never send my kids to a timeout. I do not send them to their room. They should not be in their room crying alone because nobody wants to cry alone. That is actually our greatest fear, is to be alone. And to send kids to their room to cry alone is one of the worst things that you could do. But I knew that he would be okay because I have used this process for so long. So I wanted to sit there for a moment and just help the other kids like de-escalate because they were so upset and regulate. And then I was going to go and help Noah. Typically, when a child is crying, though, I suggest you tend to the child who's crying first. Or if you have children that are very angry, you tend to them because you want to calm them down. And it's very important to calm them down in a very gentle way, just constant reassurance. I understand. I see that you're angry. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Not alone. We're going to work on this. We're here together. I have your back. All these things you got to be able to say reassurance repetitively for each child. So then we go to understanding what happened, what prompted the disconnection. So first, I would say, all right, let's hear it. What happened? Ask them to tell you what happened. And you have to remember, in any conflict, this is going to be probably very, very difficult for you to understand, but in any conflict, nobody's at fault. This is so important. Now, you're probably thinking like, well, how do you take accountability and how do you take responsibility? We will get there. There's still accountability and responsibility in the conflict that occurred, but it's very important to say out loud, it's nobody's fault. Nobody's the bad guy. Because the reason why we say this is because we want them to feel safe enough to share what's happening with them. And it's like our greatest fear, to be shamed and blamed and the bad person. And even though we need them to acknowledge that they took part in the disconnection, they took part in the conflict, we will get to that. We first have to make sure that no one feels like they're the bad guy and it's not their fault. Okay? Every single action that happens, there's a trigger. There's a trigger underneath that action. There's inside, intrinsically motivated, an emotion that happens that intrinsically motivates us to take that action. We're feeling beings. We're like emotion beings. So every single action we do in our life and every single decision we make inside the workplace, out of the workplace, in our home, in our relationships, with our children, and everything we do, it is motivated intrinsically by an emotion. So when we take that action and when we understand that, then it's very, very good to see the picture with the conflicts. It's like there was some sort of emotion under that. There was some sort of motivation under that for that child to do that specific thing or to take that specific action or to say that thing because they're hurting inside. So this is important to identify. It's nobody's fault. And I say this often, it's nobody's fault. Everything's going to be okay. You're not alone. Your feelings are valid. I understand it's very difficult for you. and I would be feeling that same amount of pain. So important to say that. Okay, so once we identify what is the disconnection, so typically, like for example, let's go with the conflict that my kids had just recently. So Noah was sitting on a chair and he was at the top of the hill and he wanted to take the chair and like tumble backwards all the way down the hill. And so Micah was walking past him and decides to kick his chair or pull him down actually from the back of the chair, and Ellie came up and was like trying to kick him down. So they're both trying to get Noah to go back down the hill, but he had asked them not to do that. So that was the disconnection, and then they did it anyways. Okay, and once they did it, that's when he got really upset and he started to chase Micah. He rolled down the hill and then got up and started to chase Micah. And that's when the conflict started happening. Now, this is important. So there are a lot of layers to conflicts, you know. Sometimes we have experiences where we, feel hurt by something someone said. We feel hurt by something someone did. We feel hurt by their facial expression, the tone of voice, a decision that they made. We can feel hurt by that. And so when we experience that pain, there's different layers and different levels. Sometimes there's a lot that happens, like it could be a lot of those things. But it's important, like we kind of have to take a microscope and look at what exactly was the trigger. So one of the things, we can say like, for example, Noah got upset that he had asked them not to kick him back in the chair, but they did anyways. So that's like an action they did, and behavior was they kicked him back into the chair after he asked them not to. So was it the fact that he was upset that they actually kicked him, or was it the fact that he had asked them not to do something, but they did it anyways? So we write those down, and then you identify what is the raw spot. So raw spots are sensitivities. Here's the list, and I'll just go briefly over them. So this is good to know that I used to be called sensitive all the time. Like, you're so sensitive. I have good news for you guys. Guess what? Everyone is sensitive. Every single person on this planet is sensitive. But we have different sensitivities. So one person could be sensitive to like being excluded or rejected. The other person could be sensitive to being mocked or criticized. The other person could be, so you have these different sensitivities that come up, and that's when we get triggered. So I might be sensitive to something, maybe the other person isn't as sensitive. So this is important. You identify the disconnection, and then you move on to step 2, which is understanding the raw spots. By the way, you can find this on my website, lifewith5kids.com, or I think it's on getfitwithfelina and .com, and you can download these forms because they are so helpful to guide you on what to do when you're feeling disconnected. Okay, let me just process this one more time. Yay, it worked. Okay, so let's do the raw spots. So we have like being excluded or rejected, not being valued or appreciated, having an ambition or dream that other people aren't interested in seeing, not acknowledging the point you're making when someone turns away from you, criticizing or making jokes about something that's fundamental to who you are, being told your feelings aren't valid, showing disapproval or disgust, dislikes to your views you negatively. So these are all raw spots. Communicate your needs and getting ignored. So when you identify what prompted the disconnection in step 1, then we identify the raw spots. Where are the raw spots? And you can have several depending on what the situation is. So then, after I was able to de-escalate the kids, and I went back into the car and I told Noah, I know that it must have been very painful for you. I'm sorry, my heart breaks for you. I would be just as upset. It totally is valid what you're experiencing. Then I would do a reconnection session and pull out these forms. But my kids have done them so many times that they know how to do these kinds of conversations without this form. So we identify the raw spots, And then you go to step 3, which is what are the emotions that you feel. So if you're dealing with a conflict with your kids, then I will do one child at a time, whoever is most activated. And then I will help them regulate, and then we go through the steps to help them express themselves. Did you guys know that just identifying your emotions and saying them out loud decreases the intensity of emotion by 70%? So what's like feeling really activated and alive in your brain, as soon as you say it, it's like, oh my gosh, you feel so much relief and like weight lifted off your shoulder. You feel free. And this is interesting because when I first started doing this process, I was so ashamed of how I was feeling. I couldn't even say it out loud. Like I couldn't even say like frustrated, irritated, hurt. Like I just thought it was like so cringy to talk about my feelings. I couldn't say those things. So it's like so amazing to be able to identify, and you have a list right here. This is why I like this form, is because you just have a list. And so you identify, you have 3 levels of emotions. You have surface, softer, or primary emotions. So you can identify the surface emotions like frustrated, anger, irritation, all annoyed. Those are all surface emotions. Then we want to get into the elevator, and we want to take the elevator down 1 level to the softer emotions. Then we want to take the elevator down to the primary emotions. We want to get to the primary emotions so we feel really understood and heard in our pain. Okay, so there's a whole list of the primary and the secondary, and the softer and the primary and the surface emotions. So that's what we do. And then the next step is to talk about an image. So a lot of times when we deal with conflicts and our feelings, it comes out so messy, like we don't know how to organize our thoughts, which makes sense because when we get triggered, our amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, and then we can't think clearly and we can't really make sense of everything. So everything comes up like so messy. So what I like about this image is if it's difficult for you to identify what the sensitivities or the raw spots are and what those emotions are that you're feeling, then we're like, okay, then I tell the kids, like, make an image of what it looks like. When I first started teaching them this, they had 0 interest in making an image. They would be like, absolutely no. Like, I'm not making an image. So I would just make it for them, and I say it out loud, and I start guessing. Like, I would tell them, well, is it like you're sitting on a cliff, and you're all alone sitting at the edge of the cliff, and then, like, your brother just walks by and pushes you off the cliff, and you just, like, fall to your death, and he's just laughing. I know that's, like, very, like, intense image, but kids, when they feel that, those emotions are so intense. And even when they were little, when I first started teaching them this stuff, I would tell them, like, is it like you have a bunch of balloons and you're so excited about these balloons, and then like your brother just comes by and pops all the balloons? Is it like that? Because when you put an image to an emotion that you're expressing or experience that you're having, it's relatable. It's really relatable. So a lot of times people say, like, how do you think it would feel? Like, how do you think it feels for me? Well, you don't know how it feels if you don't share what that image looks like. So it's very, very important to take that step. Show the image. Show what it looks like. Okay? And then we have the worst fears. And typically when we are able to identify what the worst fears are about ourselves in the relationship, about them in the relationship, and about the relationship as a whole, then that is like the root of the issue. So for example, one of my biggest fears as a daughter was failing, being a failure, just like my parents thinking that I was just an absolute failure. And that lived in me, and that I was never good enough. I was never going to be good enough for them. And was I really the daughter that they wanted, And that lived in me for so long. For like 38 years, it lived in my brain, rent-free. So it wasn't until I started doing this process and therapy with my mom, like this type of training with my mom, that I was able to identify, like, I really feel like I failed you as a daughter. And gosh, like, it was so difficult for me to even say that. I couldn't say it without crying. So for me to be able to say that here and still be smiling, that's a big deal. And so, yeah, I feel failure. We feel like we're never going to be good enough. So when we feel that way, oh, it stays with us. And those are our deepest fears. But that's actually going to be awareness and awakening for you to understand, like, what is it that you need to help calm that fear, Okay, so we're still in step 3. That is the worst fear about you and the worst fear about the other person, the worst fear about the relationship. So the worst fear, for example, would be I'm going to fail as a daughter. The worst fear about my mom, if I'm dealing with a conflict with my mom, would be she's not going to love me. The worst fear about our relationship is that we're not going to have one. So when I'm dealing with my kids, the worst fear for like Noah is that maybe Micah doesn't even care about him. And the worst fear for Noah about himself is that he's not going to want to have a relationship with Micah. And then the worst fear for their relationship together is that they're not going to be close. So like that's identifying the fear. And then we get to step 4 and 5, which is the awareness part, which is so good. What are the automatic thoughts and what are the protective behaviors? So in every conflict that we experience, we have what's called automatic thoughts and we have automatic behaviors, those protective behaviors. So we can have thoughts, for example, if you're like a withdrawer, usually it's I have to give up, I have to get away, I don't need you anyways. Those are like the withdrawer automatic thoughts. And then when you're a pursuer, the automatic thoughts are, I have to stop you. I don't care. How dare you? Like that's a big one. So if you say on those things, it's really good to recognize, what do you do in conflict? What are those automatic thoughts? As soon as we can bring that awareness, like we could shine a bright light into that darkness, we can make the shift. We can change the patterns. But until we have awareness, we can't change those patterns. Then the protective behaviors are like blaming, judging, criticizing, shaming. Those are very, very common. And actually, I absolutely was so proud of myself because this last conflict that the kids had, I was able to stay so regulated and calm in the situation without blaming anyone. And that was amazing to help the kids come back together without shaming them, blaming them, or pointing fingers, or, making them feel like they were in any way, shape, or form at fault, because they weren't. So this is very, very common when people blame, shame, criticize, and judge. And usually it's like, you're the one that made me feel this way, or you purposefully did this and purposefully did that. That is like blaming someone, okay? All right, hold on. We're going to do this one more time. Oh, no, come on. Oh, man, that was so good. So, I don't know why my phone is tripping. Hey, you know what? Sometimes that happens. That is how this works. Okay. So we have our automatic thoughts that occur when we get triggered. So remember, we have a withdrawer or pursuer. And so we have those two like automatic thoughts. And then I either like, how dare you, I have to stop you, I don't care. Or it's, I don't need you anyways, I have to get away, I give up, right? And then we have the protective behaviors, which I was just starting to talk about. Blaming and shaming, criticizing and judging. So judging is so common. This is what we're taught as society. And yes, I was so proud of myself because this last conflict with my kids, I was able to like stay so present and calm, and I could regulate and validate both parties at the same time without getting triggered myself, and then without blaming, judging, criticizing, or shaming. So blaming is like, you were the one. That's when oh, so you did this on purpose? Oh, so you decided, you purposefully, intentionally tried to do, you did this, and this is why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. Okay, so that's blaming. Shaming is like more of that. More of that. Like, how dare you? How dare you purposefully try to trigger me, or how dare you push me down? So that's like shaming is like putting someone down in their experience. And then criticizing and judging is just like, you're so ridiculous. You don't know how to this. You can't this. You like those are all the criticizing and judging. So when someone says, you're so mean, that's a judgment. You're so jealous, that's a judgment. I don't actually feel like jealous is a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's when someone doesn't feel important. That's what's triggered. When they feel unimportant, then they can get jealous. But jealous is really just the start of a negative cycle. It's like, and it's a judgment about someone. It's the same thing as like using the word narcissist. Labeling people, labels in general, or saying someone's a liar, I feel like that's a label. We're labeling them in their struggle. So like if someone's lying or someone's judging, someone's being a narcissist, it's like we're labeling them for the way that they communicate. Even if it's ineffective, they're communicating their needs ineffectively, and so we're labeling them for that. And so I stay clear away from that, like saying that's so mean, or you're so mean, or you're a narcissist, or you're whatever, abusive or whatever. Those are all labels. Yes, definitely there's toxic responses, toxic, ineffective ways of communicating, and it's really important to understand that people don't have the tools. So when you don't have the tools, you're going to use ineffective ways of communicating to express yourself. When you do have the tools, then you use effective ways of communicating to express yourself. Okay, let's see if that worked. Yay! Okay, so then we have also tone of voice, speed of speech. In the protected behaviors, we have distancing, withdrawing, numb out. So typically, if you're a withdrawer, you're going to distance yourself, you're going to numb out, you're going to get busy, avoid. Woo! That's something I have done plenty of times. Actually, when I was married, I feel like partly why I was so successful in my business was because I was just avoiding my ex-husband at all costs. Like I wanted to get busy and avoid and withdraw because I didn't have the tools to communicate. So that was ineffective way of me communicating. I withdrew, I disconnected. Like this was very ineffective. So that was my protective behavior. So people who are pursuers typically raise their voice. They will increase the speed of speech. And then they will also complain. Complaining is another protective behavior. So like when my kids complain, and that can really trigger me, that just is a sign for me that they're somewhat disconnected in some way. Okay, so once you go through all those steps, so there's 5 steps. Once you go through all those steps, then you do what's called a recap. And the reason why you do a recap is because eventually you don't need to go through every single step in order to understand how this process works. You just need to be able to get to the point where you have the conversation and you're able to say, hey, I got triggered when. So in that moment when Noah and Micah and Avi and Ellie all got into like that conflict, Avi was actually not into the conflict until the very end when Noah started attacking Micah and he had him on the floor and he was like pushing Micah's head down the grass. And then Avi like jumped up and tackled Noah and took Noah and like put him in like an arm hold. And then I had to like jump up and like say like, let go of his arm, send him to make sure they get separated. So when everybody calmed down, we did this conversation. And we didn't have to go through all 5 steps because the kids know now how to say, I got triggered when you didn't listen when I asked you to stop. My raw spots were, I felt softer and primary emotions. My image was, my worst fear, my automatic thoughts, my protective behaviors are. And then the very last thing is what I need. So this is important. You go through this entire conversation like you're recapping the conversation, so really you feel heard, understood, validated, and then you ask for what you need. So this is, oh my gosh, okay, this is really important because in conflicts, like especially in relationships and parent-child relationship and like spouse relationships, most people like tell you have to make a change, right? Like you have to be like, no, you have to change that behavior. Like you can't do that anymore. But it's actually not possible ever. It's not possible for us to ask someone to change for us. I'm about to mic drop here. Okay, this is like profound stuff right here. This is gold. And then people say like, well, people never change. No shit, Sherlock. Of course people don't change. Not like this. You cannot experience a pain in a conflict and then ask someone to change. That's it. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. In the last 6 years that I've been parenting this different way, it's been so incredibly mind-blowing to see how true that statement is. Let me make sure that I have this because this is going to be so good. All right, reset. So, when you get into a conflict, the only thing you can ask of someone is to respond to your emotional needs. That's it. You cannot ask them to change, okay? What happens is when you express your emotions and they get your pain, when you do this process and you are able to express your emotions where the other person really gets your pain, they will be emotionally, intrinsically motivated to make the change. So like if I get into a relationship, I'm not going to say like, oh, you just like messed up and, you know, I got really hurt and now you have to change that. You got to stop doing that. It's not possible for us to do that as humans. Like this, we need to ingrain this into people's brains. We cannot ask anybody to change ever, ever, ever. We cannot ask anybody to quit smoking or drinking, or we can't ask anybody to stop doing something, because every single action behavior is triggered by an intrinsic emotion. So what we can do is express our emotions to where they actually understand and they feel your pain. They're not going to want you to feel that pain anymore. They're not going to want to trigger that pain in you. So they will be motivated intrinsically to change themselves. So when you ask for what you need in a conflict, we say, these are the only options, okay? Tell me that you care. Tell me your feelings are valid. My feelings are valid. Tell me that I matter, that I'm important to you. Tell me that I'm valued, to reassure me. Typically, reassurance is connected to the fear that they said. So like, for example, if my worst fear is being a failure as a daughter, the reassurance I would need is you're not a failure as a daughter, you know, or I'll never be good enough. And the reassurance would be you are good enough just the way you are. And then to tell me I'm valued and also acknowledge. So this is, I feel, the most important, acknowledging what they did that caused the disconnection and made it difficult for you. But here's the catch, guys. Here's the catch, not their fault. The catch is both people play a role in the disconnection. In the conflict between Micah and Noah and Ellie and Avi, all of them play a role in disconnection. Every single one needs to take account. They all need to take accountability. So they all get to acknowledge that they took a role in the conflict. And this is very, very important. We're so quick to blame and point fingers. This is our survival mechanism, okay? So that is very important, is that what I need is, and then it can also be physical affection, like a hug or a kiss, depends. Like with my kids, I'm oftentimes giving them hugs or kisses because they need that. They need that. It's so important. And with a partner would be similar. But when I get hurt, I typically do not want to be hugged. I don't want to be hugged, and it's very difficult for me to give hugs. My daughter, Ellie, is the same. Like, she doesn't want a hug. She says, like, I don't like hugs. That's because she's been so hurt, and there's a lot of shame behind that. Oh, all right, you guys. That was amazing. Okay, so I'm going to end here because it's been like almost 15 minutes of me talking. So those are the steps I take, and damn, it is so powerful. It is so incredible, and it works so well. And I have seen my children go from just surviving and really struggling to thriving. And now our relationship is like so profound. It's incredible. So thank you guys so much for watching. And I will see you next Monday. Dee dee dee. Dee dee dee. Dee dee dee. Okay. All right, let's end.